And welcome back, code friends and code family. This is St. Raz, and we're back continuing our Java adventure through the Codingbat website here at Cajun Coding. I do have to apologize for my absence. I was out for about a week. I was not severely ill, fortunately, didn't need antibiotics, wasn't admitted to the hospital or anything like that. However, I did have a severe enough cold that it kind of wrecked my voice. Very uncomfortable to speak, and probably not too fun for the listener either. So, but I'm glad to be back, and we're continuing on here. Codingbat website, we're studying Java, and we are at the end of the String2 series of exercises. And we wrapped up the repeat separator problem last time, and we're going to continue on with prefix again. Given a string, consider the prefix string made of the first n characters of the string. Does that prefix string appear somewhere else in the string? Assume that the string is not empty and that n is in the range 1 to string length. So we're at least not going to have to worry or test for indices being any overflow, string out of bounds, errors, index out of bounds rather. Let me see. So this is going to just return a true or false. Boolean is the return type there. So we're not going to be returning a string. So what we'll do is inside the method here, if we don't find that substring, we're just going to return a false as our default, and then above that we'll have our code looking for the matched value. If we find it, we return true. So good old for loop. Let's see, int I. Okay, now in our search, this is our pretty standard for loop there. In our search, we are going to have the first n characters is going to be our standard we're looking to match. So we're actually going to start it at index n. We're going to start right after that. And the last characters we look at are going to be a number of characters in this at the end of the string equal to the length of that substring n. So we'll do string length minus n as the end of the loop there. And then of course inside the loop we're just going to do a comparison. So if string substring starting at I and going to I plus n, that will be the substring, the size of the characters, number of characters n, equals, and that's going to be the first n characters, so it would be the beginning of the string, str substring, 0 from the very first character to n, and of course, I always have to be paranoid about how many parentheses we close there, but if we do find it, that'll be returned true, and of course that would kick us all the way out of the function. If we go through the entire thing and we don't find it, we return false. Let me check these parentheses. Let me say, so this is closing our substring, this will be closing our equals, and we need one more, I believe, to close the if. Oh, what do we got here? Oh, there it is. It's, I believe we need to be equals, less than or equals to, I believe. Yeah, there it is. Of course, that only shows up in those little edge cases there. Okay, so on to the next one. Pardon me. A little bit of a cold left, not enough to prevent me from working. Okay, we've got XYZ middle. Given a string, does XYZ appear in the middle of the string? To define middle, we'll say that the number of characters to the left and right of the XYZ must differ by at most 1. This problem is harder than it looks. Okay, now to have 3 characters represent the exact middle of a string, that string would necessarily have to be an odd number of characters. Okay, now conversely, if you have an even number in the characters of the substring, say 2 characters, then to be in the exact middle, the string, the greater string, would have to be an even number of characters. So we're looking for about the middle, which means that those characters on the outside, either previous, or before or after the XYZ substring, they can differ by 1, but they cannot differ by more than that. And this is going to affect our logic a little bit. Now this also, let me see, this is returning a Boolean. It's just going to be yes or no, true or false rather. So we're not going to have to set up a substring, so we are going to have an if. Now this outer if, because it's going to affect our logic, if we have to deal with an odd or even number, we're going to just check to see whether our bigger string, our main string, is odd or even. So we do that. If str length divided, actually be length modulo 2. If modulo 2 is 0. Now if modulo 2 is 0, that means that it is an even number of characters in that string. The only other possibility, of course, is that is odd. So in this block, we'll use our logic dealing with an even number characters in the string, and this one an odd number of characters. So if it's an odd number of characters, we have either it is exactly in the middle. If we shift it over to one side, we lose 1 character on one side. We gain a character on the other side. Now that makes a difference of 2, which is no longer, by their standards, here in the middle. So there's really only one solution. It's exactly in the middle or it is not. So let's go ahead and do that one first. And this is the code block for the odd number of characters. So, and we can simply do it with a return, since it's either going to return true or false. And we just have one bit of code here. So return str substring, and we're going to look for the middle. So that's going to be str length divided by 2. Now it's going to start, because there's 3 characters here, so it's going to be divided by 2, and I believe it'd be minus 2 str length divided by 2 plus 1. And we can check on this. Let's do a return empty string here. Obviously that's going to be wrong, but actually I can't do an empty string because it's supposed to return a Boolean. We'll just do true. Let's check our odd numbers here. Oh, what happened here? Line 5. Oops, I didn't finish. Look, here we go. That's our substring there. Yeah, but it equals, got ahead of myself, equals XYZ. Okay, obviously we've got a lot wrong because we didn't actually code our first one there. But with this second one here, now see, this one is, actually that's false. What did I do? Let me see. String length, I'm probably off by 1 here. Okay, but if we look at this, that's 3 characters, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 7 characters. So to find the middle, it's 7 characters divided by 2. Integer division, that gives us 3. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3. But it's going to be minus 1. Minus 1, not minus 2. Now for 3 characters, this would have to be plus 2. Okay, and a lot of them light up green, so we've got that right there. Now we've got to do our other one up here. Now, a problem like this, it's no problem if you go through and just write this all in one batch here, but you might want to get used to solving solutions bit by bit, compartmentalizing things, because that's how real complex problems, programs are created. So, and this is going to look very much the same. Return str substring str length divided by 2. But there's going to be also the possibility that it's going to be very similar, but not exactly alike. Let me see if I can remember this. Now, if we have an odd number, even number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that one actually came out true because it's off by 1. Well, it's always going to be off by at least 1, but it could be off to the other side. This one is 6 divided by 3. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. This one's off to the left. So actually, if we do... No, it's not going to be 0 plus 3. It's going to be the other way, I think. Yeah, the other way would be, instead of -2, -1, it would be -2. And then this one would be +1. Which is fine, except we've got a few that are out of bounds. Why are they out of bounds? It's because they're too short. That's our edge cases. Now we could do two things. We could include an AND statement in here, and make sure you put the AND first. Check the length, and these checks. Now, if you remember, if we do an AND, logically, the first one is assessed. If the first one is false, the second one's not read. So if the length of the string is too short, then it would not check the logic of these statements. So you wouldn't get the out of bounds error. It would just check, it would just return the entire thing as false. But we can just throw an if in here really easily. So str length less than 3, return false, and that should do it, like so. And we've got another one, get sandwich. A sandwich is 2 pieces of bread with something in between. Return the string that is between the first and last appearance of bread in the given string, or return the empty string if they're not 2 pieces of bread. This reminds me of the Blues Brothers. The Blues Brothers has a song, what do they call it? Rubber Biscuit, I think. And they ask you about a wish sandwich. A wish sandwich is a sandwich where you do have 2 pieces of bread and sincerely wish you had some meat. And our job here is to return just the meat or the jam, or an empty string if we don't have 2 pieces of bread. This one has 1 piece of bread, but it returns empty. So, well, let's check our edge cases first. Let's find out if we even have any bread. So if tr, and I don't know that we've used this method before. We might have, I'm not sure. Contains, okay, and then we put what we're checking to see if it contains bread. Okay, if string contains bread. Now, we actually, if it doesn't contain bread, we're returning false. So put the bang up there in front. When you're using the bang to negate, to reverse the truth value of something, you put it all the way to the front. So sometimes you'll have, string, index of, substring, all kinds of crazy stuff. You put it at the very front of the name of the object, to the left of the name of the object that you're calling possibly many methods on. So put it right up there up front. And what we'll do, we're going to check that first. That'll return, actually we're not returning false. Okay, the return value is a boolean, isn't it? No, yeah, it's a string. So returning false is going to throw an error. Let's return an empty string. That's what they're expecting. Okay, now there's something else we've got to check. We return an empty string if there's only one piece of bread. So we need to make sure that we make sure we don't have just one piece of bread there. So what we're going to do is if index of bread equals last index of bread. And what's that doing? Well, last index of basically operates the same way that index of works. And what we're doing there is last index works from right to left looking for something. Index of works left to right. And if we have one instance of bread, comme ça, like that, okay, then our index of bread and our last index of bread is going to be the same. It's going to be the same. It's going to return an integer. And if that integer is the same, then we're going to return the empty string, because we do have one slice of bread, but we don't have two. And those are kind of edge cases. Now we're getting to the meat of the sandwich here. We're going to return what's between those two slices of bread, because we've established that that is what we have. So we return substring, and we find the substring with str index of bread, but it's not the index of bread. We're going to pick it up with the end of the index of bread, so it has 5 letters, so plus 5, and then we end the substring string last index of bread. That should do it, unless I've made a typo somewhere. No typos. Actually had a problem earlier, and I went all the way to Stack Overflow because I could not figure out why on earth something was behaving the way it was. Turns out it was a typo. I had tried to make a method call, hit the wrong key, put a comma instead of the dot operator for the method call, and was getting a weird message from the compiler. Went all the way to Stack Overflow, and someone spotted it. Of course, with my small screen that I was using, I didn't see that it was a comma instead of a dot, and I really should have typed the whole thing over again, because it is only one of these exercises, less than one of these pages here, so it wouldn't have taken much longer. The likelihood that I would have made the exact same typo, exact same place, probably pretty small, but because I didn't do that, now I have fewer points on Stack Overflow than I did earlier this morning. So, but come see, come saw. Get sandwich. Next exercise. And same star car returns true if for every star, and that's the asterisk symbol, in the string there are cars both immediately before and after the star they're the same. So return true if the preceding and following characters are the same every time that there is a star that appears. And let me see. We're not counting. There's no before character or after character, respectively, with the first or the last character there. So we're not going to have to worry about those. As you can see here, that's still true because they don't count that star and same characters there. So we're not returning a string, it's just a Boolean. So we will have return true as our default, and then our logic is going to look for an exception to that and immediately throw a false if we find one. So for int I equals, and we're going to start with 1 since we're not going to assess the very first character, string length minus 1, and that's less than, oops, it should be I I less than string length minus 1, which means that the for loop will finish executing. It will terminate before we hit the very last character. In this case, we don't have to look at that one. Okay, and let me see if actually I don't have to do that. Say if say str character at, and that's going to be at the index the for loop is currently at. So if string character at I is equal to, and single quotes here, that's our star, and string character at I minus 1, that's the one previous to it, and is not equal to str character at I plus 1. And that's our close for the character. That's our closing parentheses for the if conditional. And we're going to return false if we found that those characters don't match where we have a star. If we iterate through the entire thing, we don't encounter that condition falsifying it, then we're going to default return a true. And there it is. And in their solution, they have one for this one. This one wasn't terribly difficult, and I'm wondering why they give us solutions to some that are less difficult and some are turning into real bears and we don't get a solution even after we solve it. Let me see. It looks like theirs is exactly the same. Actually, they have it nested. They have an if inside an if, and we did it just with one if, but simple enough. Okay, and we've got 1, 2. Let's see, given a string, compute a new string by moving the first character to come after the next two characters. So ABC yields BCA. Really easy there. And then it says repeat this process for each subsequent group of 3 characters. So ABCDEF yields BCA EFD. Ignore any group of fewer than 3 characters at the end. So let me see. So now we are returning strings. So let's get our answer string set up and initialize to empty. Okay, and we can set up another string here. String, we'll call it working, and we're going to initialize it basically as a copy of the original string there. Okay, and for less than string length. Let me see. I is going to iterate by 3 each time. And this kind of is the reason I set up the working string. what we're going to do is we're going to the term they use is consume. We're going to consume the string that we have here. We're going to just work. We're going to set up the logic for just the first 3 characters, and then we're going to remove those characters from the string, and then the next iteration through the loop, we're just going to work with the first 3. You only ever have to work with the first 3, and when you're done with those, they are deleted. And let me see. Now we're going to check to make sure we have 3 characters at the beginning here. So if working length is less than 3, we're going to break out of this loop and we're going to be done. So we got that set up. Now our answer is going to be and it's going to be the second character, and our third character, and then we're going to go back for the first character. Now we can use 0, 1, and 2 here because we're working with the first characters of this string working. Only the first ones. And then, working, we're going to consume. Working is going to equal working. Sub string, and I can't stop making typos. Working equals or assignment operator. Working assigned to working substring 3, which means that we're going to start from the third character. So it should be the third. Oh yeah, well, character index 3. That's actually the 4th character. So we've shuffled around the first 3 characters, and then we're going to assign to working the value of working, starting with the 4th character and on to the end. And we know that there's a 4th character because we check to make sure it actually 3. That should do it. And there it is. Now I should probably do a little research and give a little talk about some of this stuff here. We do have some issues here. This is, remember, keep the code dry. Don't repeat yourself. Except I'm doing that right here. But there's an interesting thing here. Trying to concatenate characters in a single line can lead to some interesting results like that. And remember, we've got our comment out that line, so it's no longer there. But if we do this, we get some weirdness here. And that's because concatenating characters in a single line like that doesn't work exactly the same way as doing like substrings or strings for that matter. You can add that character at to a string one at a time on lines like this. It's fine, and I may discuss that with a later video there. And that is 1, 2. Pardon me. Let me see. I think we can let's get ZipZap. How much further we got? These are a little more difficult. Start out. Let's get ZipZap and see where we go from there. Okay, look for patterns like zip and zap in the string. Length 3, starting with Z and ending with P. Return a string where for all such words the middle letter is gone, so ZipZap or ZipX zap yields ZPXZP. So this is a pretty familiar pattern we've got. We're looking for a character followed 2 indices behind by another character with an interposing character that could be of any value. So now we are returning a string, so we'll go ahead and set up our string answer, and of course initialize that to empty. Let me see, we're going to be using a for loop going through this. Int I equals 0. I is less than string length. Okay, now we're going to look for that pattern. So if, let me see, str character at I equals z, and str character at I plus 2 equals p, answer plus equals, and we plus equals, it's going to be zp. We could use the indices and everything, but why? We know exactly what those characters are. So we're going to add zp on there. And we're also going to increment I, because we're not going to want to repeat those. Once we've got the zp, or the zp in place of the zip, we don't want to move just to the very next character and repeat ourselves. We're just going to bounce all the way. So we're going to iterate the I. It's going to be 2 places, not 3, because the for loop iterates by 1 each time it goes through. Now if we don't find those characters else, we're just going to copy the string. So it's going to be answer plus equals, and whatever is at that particular spot, just like that. And we won't have to make those extra jumps there, and we'll just go back. Now over here, let me see, and we do have a potential for a string out of bounds if we happen to be very close to the end. So let's make sure. We're just going to build into this if let me see, if I plus 2 less than a string length, and so it's going to check for that before it checks for these. If we're coming at the very last couple of spots and it looks like it would go over here, if this fails, then it'll just go down to the else and add on those last few characters. And of course at the end we return answer. And let's see if I've made mistakes anywhere. If, looking at parentheses here, I think it's okay. Oh, look what we've got. It's line 6. What is that? Miss semicolon. I almost had it. It was almost completely perfect. Damn semicolon. Okay. And this is just a, sometimes you can, if you need to skip over things, let's say you've got a for loop that's iterating 1 by 1 and you need to skip a section for whatever reason, you can manually, quote unquote manually, increment your incrementor within a code block inside the for loop. So, and that puts us about 35 minutes, so we should be able to get these. I'm not sure how complicated into the weeds we're going to get with these, but I don't think it'll take more than 30 minutes. So we'll go ahead and finish this up with the next video. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Certainly hope the pipes hold out and be able to contribute a little more consistently here on out. Lots of lemon and honey and good old-fashioned Western medicine to stave off all those colds and stuff. Thanks again. Like, subscribe, comments, questions, and requests always welcome. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.